Hello students, let me show you the various normas of the skull. So this is actually the full skull and this is cut skull. In the full skull we can make out the various normas over here. This is norma frontalis, right? Then here we have this is norma verticalis or the superior view, right? And this is norma occipitalis or the posterior view. Then this one is norma lateralis or the lateral view, and inferiorly we have this one. As you can see, this is norma basalis or the inferior view of the skull. So I will just show you the important landmarks of the various normas. In the norma verticalis you see here, this is the coronal suture, right? And in the midline we have the mid sagittal suture. So meeting point of this coronal and the sagittal suture is known as the bregma, right? It represents anterior fontanelle in the fetal skull, okay? Then posteriorly here we have, this is lambdoid suture and this is sagittal suture. So the area between the lambdoid and the sagittal suture is known as the lambda, okay? In the fetal skull you see the posterior fontanelle, okay? Now let us discuss about, so this one, the norma frontalis. You can see these are the orbital openings. I told you the boundaries also, the boundaries of the orbital openings, okay, that you read from the PowerPoint of my previous classes. So these two are the nasal bones, right? This is frontonasal suture, this is internasal suture, right? And here you can see the facial bones here. This is actually the maxillary bone. This is the body of the maxilla, the maxillary bone, and the prominence of the cheek is the zygomatic bone, okay? So this is zygomatic bone. You have two foramens here. This is supraorbital foramen and here you have the infraorbital foramen. This is the nasal aperture, the anterior nasal aperture we say, okay? So this is some features of the these are some features of the norma frontalis. I will show you the features of the norma basalis. The norma basalis you can see here. So this is norma basalis. Norma basalis has been divided into three parts by two imaginary lines. One imaginary line is passing from the posterior border of the hard palate and other is from the anterior border of the foramen magnum, okay? So if you see the anterior part of the norma basalis, in the anterior part you see the alveolar arch, okay? They form sockets for the upper teeth, okay? Alveolar arch is formed by alveolar process of the maxilla, and we have hard palate here, formation of the hard palate. It is formed by the maxillary bone as well as the palatine bone. So anterior two-third of the hard palate, it is formed by palatine process of the maxilla. Posterior one-third of the hard palate, it is formed by horizontal plates of the palatine bone. So here you can make out this is intermaxillary suture, this is interpalatine suture, and this is palatomaxillary suture. So together this suture is known as the cruciform suture, okay? And the surface of the hard palate here, it is rough, it is pitted. The pitted appearance of the hard palate is due to the presence of palatine glands, okay? This is incisive fossa which leads into incisive foramen, eventually leading to incisive canal. Here we have the greater palatine foramen and let me show you the lesser palatine foramen. So this is greater palatine foramen and here you have the lesser palatine foramen, two foramina basically. One is small and the other is large. This is small foramen, lesser palatine and greater palatine. This is palatine groove. So yesterday I have told you the structures passing through these foramina, okay? Now this is posterior border of the hard palate. So in the posterior border of the hard palate, midline you see the projection. This is posterior nasal spine. This is posterior nasal spine, and there is a curved ridge which is known as pterygoid ridge we say, okay? So then here we have the two apertures over here. These are the posterior nasal apertures, okay? In the midline you have vomer bone. Vomer, it has two alae, the alae of the vomer, okay? And here you have the two pterygoid plates. This is medial pterygoid plate and the lateral pterygoid plate, okay, on either side. This is medial pterygoid plate and lateral pterygoid. This is lateral pterygoid plate, okay? So in between you have a fossa. This is a pterygoid fossa, we say. Okay, and this is basilar part of the occipital bone where you have a tubercle. This is pharyngeal tubercle. I told you the attachment also. It gives attachment to the constrictor, superior constrictor of the pharynx. Okay. Then we can find in the lateral area we can see the greater wing of the sphenoid. This is greater wing of the sphenoid. Okay, and you can see where you can make out various foramina over here from the norma basalis. This is the foramen ovale, and this is foramen spinosum. I told you the structures passing through this. Okay, foramen ovale, foramen spinosum. This is carotid canal. This is foramen lacerum, right? And you have the styloid process over here. You can see this is very sharp, a sharp medial-like process, the styloid process. It gives attachment to various muscles. Okay, and here between the styloid process and the mastoid process you have a foramen. This is stylomastoid foramen, right? And here we have the condylar canal, or the anterior condylar canal, we say hypoglossal canal, and this is foramen magnum. I will discuss the structures passing through foramen magnum. Okay, so these are some features in the norma basalis. Now let us see, if you see the interior of the skull, this is the interior. Interior of the skull, you have various cranial fossa. This is anterior cranial fossa, this is middle cranial fossa, and posterior cranial fossa. In the anterior cranial fossa, you see in the midline, there is a projection here. This is crista galli, we say. It gives attachment to the anterior end of the falx cerebri. Okay, and here you have on either side, this is actually the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone. The olfactory nerves pass through this cribriform. It is sieve-like. Okay, and here you have the sella turcica. The sella turcica, actually it gives the pituitary gland is present in the sella turcica. Okay, so next here we have this is actually the lesser wing of the sphenoid. These are the lesser wing of the sphenoid, and this entire thing is greater wing of the sphenoid. And here you can make out the petrous temporal bone. This is petrous part of the temporal bone on either side. Okay, and I can show you the various foramina over here. This is actually the foramen ovale, and this is the foramen rotundum, and behind this you have here, behind the foramen ovale, foramen spinosum, right? And this is actually the foramen lacerum. Okay, and one foramen is there over the petrous temporal bone. This is the internal acoustic meatus, we say. This is actually internal acoustic meatus. Okay, remember, and we can make out here, this is actually the jugular foramen. Okay, yesterday I told you that structures passing through the jugular foramen. So what I mean to say is that whatever the foramens you see from the inferior view of the skull, you also make out from the interior. Okay, so except the foramen rotundum. Okay, the all other foramens you can make out. Here you can see the optic canal, right? And just below the lesser wing of the sphenoid, you have a fissure over here. Let me show you. Not that one. This is somewhat deep actually. So just beneath the lesser wing of the sphenoid, you have the so-called the superior orbital fissure here. So exactly at this place, the superior orbital fissure. Okay, we studied the various structures passing through superior orbital fissure. The main thing is identification. Okay, what is present in the what are the structures present in the anterior cranial fossa, frontal lobe of the brain. Okay, here the temporal lobes of the brain. Here you have the cerebellar fossa for the cerebellum and brainstem. Okay, the medulla oblongata passes through the foramen magnum. So these are some landmarks which are very, very important in case of interior of the skull. Okay, the thing is that you have to remember the foramens which are present over here, and what are the contents in the anterior cranial fossa, and what are the contents in the middle cranial fossa, and contents in the posterior cranial fossa. Okay, this is just I am giving you brief explanation about the various parts and foramens present in the cranial cavity, right? So remember, the cranial cavity has been divided into three parts here: the anterior cranial fossa, middle cranial fossa, and posterior cranial fossa. And you should remember some bony landmarks and some attachments. Okay, and various foramina present in the middle cranial fossa as well as the posterior cranial fossa. Okay, so actually this is about the various normas which we discussed. So remember, this is norma frontalis, norma verticalis, then the norma lateralis, then behind we have this is norma what you call the occipitalis, we say, or the posterior view of the skull. Okay, thank you students. Just to have the idea what exactly we are studying, this is actually the practical thing, the real skull, where you can make out all these things. Okay, and thank you very much.